The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Café. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Writer's Block. I'm Deborah Monk, empowering you to find your creative voice.
And I'm Shelley Devlin, inspiring you to find your why.
And today we welcome Barb Wallace back to continue our series on the most common writing mistakes. Today we're on number 7, which is conflict. And may I say, I hate conflict. I hate conflict in life and I hate conflict in books because I just don't get it. So I'm so excited to have Barb here to teach us.
Yeah, we did a podcast a few months ago on conflict. I like conflict in books, not in real life.
I like in books.
In real life, I am completely conflict averse, but I love conflict in books because conflict is what makes the book. It is what makes...
All right, so teach us.
Okay.
Teach us, Barb.
All right. Conflict is when you have the collision of two opposing forces. And all stories have conflict, no matter what kind of story they are. Because I was thinking about this when I was writing out notes earlier, because Shelley writes memoirs. Mm-hmm. Even memoirs have conflict.
I after reading your notes, I realized I've identified a few conflicts.
Yeah, because there's always opposing forces. And like I said, all good stories, that's where the story comes. No one wants to read a boring thing where like they had no problems. They had no...
Boy meets girl, girl fall in love, and live happily ever after.
Right.
Book's done. 3 sentences.
Exactly. So before we do the problems with conflict, this is what conflict is not, because these are the mistakes that I see a lot of times when I read judge contests with beginning writers and things like that. Conflict is not constant bickering. You'll read these scenes.
Good news. We don't have conflict.
You two want to give us an example of that? Or
No, but we must not have conflict then. We just bicker.
I mean, characters may disagree. They will argue. But those scenes where they're bickering just for the sake of bickering.
That's not conflict.
You have a scene where the character picks a fight for no reason, no discernible reason, but they pick a fight. And so you have them arguing. The guy will say, we need to go upstairs and hide. Why? Why do you think I have to do that? They argue back and forth, and there's no discernible reason. You're going, why are you even arguing this point?
So you have a reason to club her over the head and drag her up the stairs, caveman style.
Ooh, want to play tennis?
So story conflict is not constant bickering. It is not something that can be solved in a 5-minute conversation. A lot of times you'll read a story where someone will overhear something, make a mistaken belief. He's talking to Nancy. He must be having an affair. And then they'll spend the entire book under that mistaken belief that could have been cleared up by saying, who's Nancy? My sister. Oh.
Well, but then when you find out he is having an affair with Nancy, there's a bigger problem.
It's a whole thing.
Right. But so conflict's resolved in a 5-minute conversation.
Right. Or a misunderstanding.
A misunderstanding. It cannot be solved that easily. It cannot be something that the character can walk away from without serious repercussions or change.
Okay. So is that how it would play out in a memoir?
Yes, I think so, because the memoir is the story of how you've grown and changed in a life. When you start at page 1 of a memoir, you're one person. And through all these experiences you're having, you are a different person at the end.
Interesting.
Okay.
So we have to think about your book, Shelley.
right?
And think, are you different at the end?
In the end of that story, we both learned something from that card.
Right, because you've learned something and you're now not the same person you were on page 1.
And I think he learned something as well.
We talked about it it's a greeting card that she got with a message from her son, and it propels her to change some things and look at life differently. That's the conflict, though. Was the mention of the card is the conflict you were feeling between career and motherhood.
Tell our listeners about the card.
So the card was my son had given me when he was, old enough to write wobbly with a crayon. So I described that whole scene and getting that card, and it said, Happy Mother's Day. I wish you didn't work so much.
In the crayon.
Right.
And I've saved that
And you feel this guilt. And the conflict is that clash between career woman trying to build a business and mother wanting to stay home and be with your kids. And that clash of those two identities, that is an internal conflict.
And she couldn't walk away from either.
No, so hindsight
not
in
without
the end,
becoming
of course,
a different
we
person.
flash back to that card because now he's, 23 years old and doing a college internship, and I think about that card. But I think that what he learned is the work I needed to put in hard work gets you somewhere. And what I learned was it was the moments of time that I spent with him, not the amount of time. It was the quality of the time that I could spend with him.
But you became a different person.
Yes.
You changed. You couldn't just say, screw this, I'm going to walk away from one or the other. You had to become a different person in order to solve that problem.
Conflict is the sandpaper kind of molding the rough corners of the character, right?
Wow. I'm writing that down too.
You know,
Barb's going to disagree.
I'm going to disagree with that. It's
Bring it
not
on,
the
Barb.
sandpaper. It's the if you're climbing a mountain, it's the constant blockage in your path, whether they're real or metaphorical. It's the boulder in your path preventing you from getting to where you want. Your characters have goals. Your characters have reasons for those goals. The conflict is the thing that's stopping them from achieving their goal. And they have to figure out a way around the thing that's stopping them.
So rough edges, and then the sandpaper.
No sandpaper.
Those edges.
Nope.
And molds the block into the person that the character wants to be. I'm sticking with my thing.
Okay. So there are two types of conflict. There's external conflict,
Like
which
sandpaper.
Which is the literal boulder. There's no sandpaper, Jonathan. No,
She's not letting you have it. She's not letting
there
you have
will be no sandpaper.
In the notes here, it'll say
sandpaper.
conflict
In the
is
notes,
not
he does.
sandpaper.
That's it. There's no
He does
sandpaper.
have control of the notes.
So it's a literal thing that you're working against. It's the ballroom dancer who wants to be a champion and her partner breaks an ankle a month before the championship, so she's got to find a new partner. That's an external conflict, like, oh my God, my partner's broken. What am I going to do? No.
Yeah, the funny thing is you use that example. I broke my toe 3 weeks before the United States Ballroom Championships.
And what you had to...
I danced anyway.
danced
Right,
anyway.
but you had to figure out, like, okay, so now what am I going to do? Here's my problem. How do I solve it?
I had to have ultrasound on my foot to get it into my shoe because it was so swollen. And I had to go to a specialist to make sure that I wasn't going to actually hurt, when I was having the
But
foot
see,
set.
that was an external conflict, though.
Well, it wasn't in my case because it was like, I'm dancing. I don't care it doesn't matter what happens to me. I'm dancing.
But it was a
So
problem.
would you
in front of
say that a swollen foot is like sandpaper?
Oh my Jesus.
Is that
Maybe if I used sandpaper on my foot, I
But
could have
since
gotten
you
it
got to
into
get
the
in
shoe.
right. There we go. We're going to
Anyway.
put sandpaper.
Poor Barb.
Yeah. The protagonist wants to arrest a killer, and the killer is trying to kill him. There's a conflict, right?
Okay.
Or they want to climb Mount Everest, and there's a literal boulder in their path. Those are external conflicts. And then
Okay.
there's the internal conflict, which is born of their fears, their thoughts, their desires. And those are the ones that are harder to overcome.
So was mine internal?
Yours
then?
is an internal
Okay.
conflict.
Oh,
'cause it's
definitely.
guilt,
Because I
yes.
felt internal.
Yeah.
We just said, I used an example that Deb told me doesn't exist. So I said the championship ballroom dancer
Which
who
is sweet of her. Obviously, she's using
Right.
these examples. Nice.
wants to make a comeback, but she also has a child. But it's similar to what Shelley's is. The woman being torn between wanting to be a mother and staying at home with her child and that guilt that she feels by leaving him and wanting to build a business and honor that half of her.
Right.
The clash of the two different personalities is the conflict. Or you go back to your detective wanting to do the killer. He wants to catch a killer, but it's starting to look like the killer's his sister.
Right,
And he's a by-the-book detective. People who are guilty need to be arrested.
Until it's
And
your sister.
now it's his sister.
Right. Way more interesting.
Right.
You also gave us an example of the mountain climber.
Oh yeah, he's climbing the mountain to prove that his father is. It proved that she's
woman.
the woman. I'm going to do this because I'm going to prove that I'm as good as my father and brothers. And she's really kind of deathly afraid of heights.
Which is so much more interesting. So, someone who
Right,
wants to climb
right.
Mount Everest, that's interesting. But now if she's afraid of heights,
She has to overcome
it's a lot
herself.
more interesting.
You'll notice that in most of these cases, you're dealing with a core belief that the character has. For example, the core belief that mothers should stay home with their kids versus, but I want something more.
Well, mothers should stay home with their kids, but mothers should also make sure their kids can eat.
right.
So there's that. It
There's
is-
that. But
Truth there.
Or
we
you could
have
work
these-
at Market Basket and feed them ramen noodles. I'm just
but
saying.
you're still
there's
leaving 'em.
options.
You're still leaving them.
We have these ingrained things in ourselves that we believe. Just everyone who's a killer must be punished.
Oh, like love
And
conquers all. Like that's a nice belief.
I am not worthy of love. Those things are inside you, and the internal conflict is something that's making you challenge that belief. They're not easily solved, but those are the most compelling stories because they involve the character having to grow and change and become someone different at the end. Because, and ideally, that's what the reader loves the best. They want to see a person the problem, but they're really hooked on the internal stuff too. The The emotion.
How is the person who's afraid of heights going to climb the mountain is a lot more interesting than how's, this Iron Man going to climb the mountain.
Well,
the Iron Man's going to climb pretty easily.
But not necessarily. I'll preface that because I talked about stories and having a good balance of conflict. If you were writing an action-driven plot, like an adventure story where they're climbing Mount Everest, you're probably going to be more heavy on the external conflict and the crisis that they face.
Okay.
Versus the internal arguments in their head.
I'm just thinking about me writing it. All my head thoughts. Climbing Mount Everest.
With fairies and butterflies. And she stopped because there was a small deer by the edge of the creek.
Exactly. Gotta help Bambi find her mother.
So,
hello, Dawn boys.
But I think that I haven't read either book, but I would say that there'd be a difference between a heavy-duty wilderness book about climbing to reaching the peak of Mount Everest and Cheryl Strayhead's Into the Wild, where she's battling her own demons and the journey is a metaphor versus the literal journey is the story.
Right.
So,
which is great. I have that book. We should go back and read it because she does the Pacific Coast Highway Trail, I think, which is pretty intense. Like that's an intense.
But the story isn't about her hike. The story is
Right.
about her personal journey.
Right.
But there are also books about the hike.
Right.
There's great books that are written about expeditions to the South Pole and what they went through. If you read about the Endeavor, which got frozen in the ice, there's enough going on there that you don't need the internal conflict of whether he felt guilty over going at this time of day. There's enough problems with the fact that he's frozen in ice and they're all going to die. There's enough conflict. So if you're writing an action-oriented book, you're probably going to lean much more heavy on external conflict versus internal. But if you're reading a character-driven book, then you want to do more internal. You want to lean more like 60-40. Does that mean that you can write a book do you need it? No. One of my examples I always use about there's lack of internal conflict is the Da Vinci Code. Page turner. But honestly,
did you read it?
Honestly, there's
ago.
not a whole lot of characterization or internal conflict. He's just trying to solve the mystery. And when I talk about characterization and weak characterization, you can get away with it if you're really heavy, and depending on the book. I mean, Dan Brown certainly does it right. But to make sure the internal conflict is strong enough, and as I said in my notes, unless you're Dan Brown and you can write a fantastic thriller, start with the character, start with their biggest fears, their deepest desires, and what duties or expectations that they feel they need. Like, does he feel it is his duty to uphold the law because he took a solemn oath and his father was a sheriff and his father before him? And does he believe that that's
black and white?
That's
right
his
and
identity.
wrong.
Right. So now he's suddenly being challenged by, my sister may have killed the guy, and it might actually have been justifiable because he was beating the crap out of her, and so she burned his bed. And you start getting into the shades of gray.
Right.
That's where
and
your
he's
internal
not
conflict
comfortable
is.
in gray.
Right. Put him in a situation where they have to question their core beliefs and identity.
Well, we're definitely going to have to make sure all three of us are doing that.
One more iron in the fire. One more ball to juggle.
Yes. Barb, where can we find you?
You can find me at my website, which is barbarawallace.com, or you can find me on Facebook, and it's Barbara Wallace Author.
Wonderful. Well, we're looking forward to the continuing of this series, and if you want to hear this episode again or share it with a friend, send them to unitedpodcastnetwork.tv. That's unitedpodcastnetwork.tv. You can find this podcast and the vodcast video on demand in case you want to watch it. Find this episode and all previous episodes on unitedpodcastnetwork.tv, and please subscribe.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Café, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.